Hey everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo Podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank with the Forum's Jeff Kolpack. I'm Dom Izzo. North Dakota State set to play a football game for the first time in 3 weeks as they'll travel to the Unidome and the University of Northern Iowa for a game tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Since the last time you and I shared a podcast, a lot has happened in 7 days. I thought nothing would pass the expediency of the news that we had last summer. This week has done that and then some, with the amount of teams that decided to opt out, other teams that can't find any games, that their seasons are done. We had an automatic bid taken away and then given back and then taken away again. And here as we sit now, 9 days out from Selection Sunday, again, I'm reminded of Vince Lombardi. What the hell is going on out here?
Heads are exploding if you're following FCS football. But are you surprised? I'm not. We figured teams are going to opt out toward the end of the year.
Yeah.
And especially those out of the playoff hunt. Now, Chattanooga,
it's a mess, though.
Chattanooga doesn't really make a lot of sense. The Mocs, right? The Mocs probably would have had a very good
playoff
chance.
Team.
Yeah.
Yep. Maine just found out that they're done. And then Maine was in the mix for a playoff berth. Rhode Island, never good in the mix for a playoff berth. And I want to get to that in a second. I want to touch on your column yesterday because I know that stirred a lot of passion on both sides. And I know you touched on this last week on the podcast on this. I want you to explain, I guess, your line of thinking, and then I want to just have a couple thoughts on that.
Yeah, let me back up a little bit here. And the thought first hit me last week when I took the opportunity with the Bison not playing football. I went down to Sioux Falls and watched my son's Duluth baseball team, Minnesota Duluth, play at the University of Sioux Falls. And as I'm driving, I'm thinking, okay, this could end at any second here. I could get to Sioux Falls and some positive test and game done. Head back to Fargo. Later on last week and over the weekend, my wife and I went to Duluth and watched them play the Upper Iowa Series. And again, that's a lot of miles to think we could get to Duluth and this series could be done. These 4 games could be just wiped clean. As we're heading to the ballpark, who knows? That's the nature of a positive test, because when that happens, it's immediate and it's over. So I got back and I'm thinking, when does testing end, Dom? At what point do we stop testing? Who's going to make that call? Is it Fauci? Is it the CDC? Is it each state? Is it the governor? Is it the NCAA? Who's going to make that call? Is it each school? I don't know. But at some point, Dom, and we need to stop testing. We cannot live like this. And that was essentially the theme of my column. We cannot continue to live like this. We can't. We can't go into next fall. Why would you buy a season ticket? Because that week your game could be done. Why would you travel to UNI this week? Saturday morning the game could be done. At some point we got to stop testing and we got to get on living. Remember that line in Shawshank Redemption? You either got to get busy dying or get busy living. And at some point, and I don't know when that is, if it's this fall or 2022, we can't keep going like this.
I don't disagree with that part. My disagreement, frankly, I'll say this, the vaccine has to be more, I guess, known in the NCAA ranks to players and coaches to say, to answer your question, when is it going to stop? I think when the vaccine is readily available.
It is.
And it is, but I'm saying to the athletes and to the coaches, and the knowledge is there. And I think what Rutgers is doing is how you're going to go where you're going to go. Rutgers is mandating that if you want to come back on campus, you have to be vaccinated.
And that's a land-grant university.
Yep.
It's not a private school. That is a public land-grant university.
That's the State University of New Jersey. So if you want to get there and have college football back, then that's where it has to go. That's where I think even professional sports are seeing that now, where Cleveland's, I know Terry Francona, the manager of the Indians, said, if we want our travel party to grow and get back to somewhat normalcy, our team has to be vaccinated. The Mets, I saw, they put it out there. They're making social media waves to their fans to say it's efficient, it works, and this is, if you want things to get back to normal, then that's where you have to go.
And the other idea that really spurred me to write this column was when the news hit this week that Essentia, Sanford, and Cass County Public Health all are taking walk-ins.
Yep.
Dom, you can walk in and get a shot right now.
Yep.
You can.
And I would encourage people to do it. I would. If you want to have tailgating back, if you want to have Bison football the way that you know it, that's the quickest way to have that happen.
I got a text from a friend of mine after reading the column. They said they're taking, and it's Friday, so for this podcast, it's Friday. They're taking walk-ins at the medicine shop in North Fargo until 4:30 for the one dose.
Yep.
You can
get it done.
You can go get it done. You don't even have to go on a website. Just walk in.
And the peace of mind, I got my shot in the middle of March.
Takes the pressure off.
And I would say it doesn't mean I'm not wearing a mask still. Doesn't mean I'm still being cautious.
I made that point.
But it's the peace of mind, especially because for me, Jeff, I was out in the middle of it in Western North Dakota. And I'll blast Western North Dakota, especially in Minot, where it seemed like the virus was over and done with when we were out there for the Class B basketball tournaments. I got dirty looks for wearing masks, which I didn't appreciate whatsoever. I did that for safety for everybody else and my own included. And the peace of mind after getting the vaccine, I got the Johnson & Johnson, the one-shot deal, it's unbelievable. It really is. Does it mean I'm not still concerned about it? No, I clearly am and still will be. But that forefront is gone off my mind. My parents got it. I'm thrilled about that. My wife has it. My in-laws have it.
You're talking about the vaccine?
Yeah, they are all been vaccinated now. And we were able to have Easter together this past Sunday. First time we've had a meal together since basically last February of 2020. So if you want all the things you laid out, you want all that, then that needs to be mandated by the NCAA. And I get it. There are going to be people that don't want to do it. And maybe that means you don't play. I don't know. I'm not in charge of the rules.
Or don't go to the game. I don't know.
But if you want college football to be back what it was and tailgating to be back what it was, that's what has to happen. That's what the vaccine has to be readily available.
Exactly what I wrote.
And have it for people that need to get the shot. You know, I think Rutgers is probably going to get some pushback from some private schools on that, of what they're doing about having their kids be back on campus and have to be vaccinated. The students, I should say, be vaccinated. But this is my opinion. That's where it has to go.
I wasn't sure if a public school could mandate that, but they do mandate other vaccinations.
Correct. You got to have your mumps,
measles.
Right. You got to have all those. You know, you have that has been for schools here, you know, for high schools, elementary schools, all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's maybe where it has to go.
And I threw that on Twitter. Is that possible? And one of somebody in the know goes, absolutely. Absolutely, you can do that. The state can mandate that.
Yeah.
The NCAA can mandate that.
Do you think the NCAA, do you think they will?
I think you have to, don't you?
I do. But granted, they got enough on their plate right now because they're drowning, so to speak, especially with the volleyball kerfuffle that's up there now. But I think if they want to have their multi-billion-dollar industry be back to normal, which is football, that's the way it has to go.
We can't have another football season like this. It's too much. It's too much pressure on the coaches. You think Matt Entz has enjoyed the spring? Do you think I don't think
anybody's enjoyed the spring, frankly. No. I don't think anybody has. Brock Spack said it perfectly. He said, the longer that we've played in the spring, we have hurt the fall. And that's the bottom line. And that should be the end of discussion on this, Kolpack. That should be Pat Everett calling up the NCAA and saying, we're done. And then everybody else would follow. I don't know why that hasn't happened yet. This dangling of a asterisk championship that's out there in Frisco in 8 weeks time just makes me shake my head on that, you know?
I think McFeely put it very accurately too, that, okay, football in the fall, they threw it out there, this carrot. Let's play in the spring. You want to play. And I was in that camp too. But then reality hit, it feels a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for coaches, once we got to maybe January 15th, they're like, we're going to have to play. We're going to have to start practicing.
Indiana State said no.
All those teams had the right idea. I continue to harp on that. Montana State, Towson, Sac State, they all have the right mindset on that. Now, with that, this has been a busy week, more off the field than on it, obviously, as North Dakota State hasn't played in 3 weeks, with the news you broke on Monday on Josh Hayes deciding to head into the portal. And I thought Matt Entz laid this out really well on Monday during his press conference with basically a three-pronged reason. Namely, the fact the Bison have not played the last couple weeks led, his mind to wander. You
start to think.
Yeah.
You start to think. And did somebody get to him? I don't know that, but he wants to move back, and he has good reasons. He hasn't, he hardly sees his daughter, his 2-year-old daughter. Yep. That's a very. The reason he left, though, he didn't want to get hurt.
Right.
Why risk injury?
Correct.
I'm done. He's a captain.
Right. He's won 3 championships here. And as we noted when we did this podcast last March, Jabril Cox opened the door. And Entz made that point as well on Monday, that seeing Jabril go from a 4th or 5th round guy to now a 2nd round draft pick later this month in the NFL draft, for Josh Hayes, he's thinking, all right, well, if I can go play at Central Florida or wherever down in the South, I can make myself into an NFL draft pick.
Now, do you think he's at that level?
I think he's good. I think that obviously you get to, if it's an American school, I don't know if he's going to go Power 5, an American school, Sun Belt, wherever, Mountain West, he can be, I think he can be a free agency. Yeah.
Maybe. Okay.
I think so. He's talented. I mean, we saw it the first game he
hits
started.
Hard. He hits hard.
The very first game he started was the James Madison National Championship game 1 when he's on Riley Stapleton, and he did an amazing job on one of the best wide receivers in the FCS that year. He's clearly talented. I think.
But for every Josh Hayes.
Yes, there's an Adam Cofield, I think.
Right. There's 3 or 4 others. There's, Nasir Hall went into the portal this year. And that's another reason. Be careful about graduating from high school early and enrolling early in college. I don't know if he was good enough. Was he good enough? We don't know.
We don't know anything about him. He only got here in January. He was part of the class of 2021, and now he's gone.
That's the sense I got, is he maybe wasn't good enough. When he got here, the level probably surprised him a little bit.
What do you think of the theory of, for guys far away, Hayes from Florida, Howells from Georgia, that with the pandemic thrown in now and not being able to get back home, that may restrict
it didn't help
getting back there, that might hurt NDSU in trying to go to a Florida, a Georgia, South Carolina, places far away, Texas, that may hurt down the road.
In the future?
Yeah.
Well, if we get vaccinated and we go back to our point,
Correct.
I don't think it will. I think things will go back to what they were. Kids are still mobile. I mean, kids are mobile. They're more mobile than they ever were, with camps and going and showcases and huddle tapes, and they're being seen. So I don't think that's going to be a big deal.
Okay. I'm curious. I was just curious on that, see what that would be like going forward on this front for guys that are going further away of the attempt to get back home. Hayes had a unique circumstance. You brought it up. He had a daughter of September of 2019, and he's had to reintroduce himself to his daughter every time.
Right.
And that's real life stuff. I can't even imagine that. As a new dad, roughly, my son is almost 2. I can't even imagine having to do that.
But can you wait 3-4 weeks more? Maybe not.
Maybe not. That's the thing. With idle time, like the guys have had for the last 3 weeks, it leaves your mind to wander.
I think the threat of injury was probably
Ever-present.
paramount in ending his career now.
And that, again, goes back to this whole messed up spring deal of playing in the spring. Because,
but if they played in the fall, he would be done anyway. And
correct.
Don't forget about that.
Yep. Like if the season had been played in normal time.
Right.
Yes. It's
without COVID eligibility and all those things.
This is the Kolpack and Izzo Podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank. As North Dakota State gets set to take on Northern Iowa. I want to talk actually about the football
Are they playing?
game.
Who are they playing?
So it's Northern Iowa. The Panthers come in. They did not play last week. Their game with South Dakota was canceled because of a positive COVID case among the Coyotes, whose season is now done. Up to that point, Northern Iowa played all of its games. They are 3-3 on the season. Will McIlvain, their quarterback, expected to be back. He missed a couple games because of COVID close contact. The starting quarterback, as you wrote before the season got going, the most experienced quarterback in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. And we've talked about this throughout the spring. We've harped on the Bison guys that aren't here. The Panthers have been ravaged, Jeff, with Spencer Brown, Ellerson Smith, Briley Moore, Xavier Williams, Kolarevich, their outstanding linebacker, all gone. All of them. And they were all conference players.
They still bring back a pretty good defense, though. You look at the stats. They've given up 102.2 yards rushing per game. NDSU has given up 108.2. So you have similar defenses. I think NDSU is a little better offensively.
Yeah.
Especially with the way they ran against UND. Their offensive line seems to have found their streak, although that was now 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. Who remembers that, right? I look at their offensive line has been ravaged too. They've had a couple guys, UNI's has been hurt, and that will be a struggle for them against a pretty good Bison defensive line led by Spencer Wagee. up front. It goes to show you, too, by the way, and you mentioned this, that you and I lost as offensive coordinator the week of the game of South Dakota State, of how weird and bizarre this spring season has been for them.
What do we think of Phoenix Sproles' tweet where he says, I'm very, very close. I'm close, I'm very close. And getting back from an injury is
pretty cryptic.
Will Colby Johnson play this week? Maybe not.
I don't think so. Knowing that injury, I don't think so on Kobe. I think it's probably do we see Phoenix Sproles for the Dakota Marker game next week? Wouldn't surprise me, not without knowing any inside intel as I sit here talking with you, but that seems to make you think that maybe there might be something coming.
And I'm really curious to see Hunter Lupke in his second game on Saturday against the Panthers, who again are very good rushing defense. Hunter Lupke, of course, the one game bang up job he did at UND. Is he going to be the regular guy? I think he will be.
Yeah, I think so too. He gets 20-some-odd carries tomorrow, and you don't even think twice about it. Especially if Johnson's not able to play, then it's him and Ganella basically is the 1-2 punch.
Bussy, we think
Bussy should be back as well, but you're not going to give him more than 10 carries, I'd imagine. That's just what Bussy can do. But now with he played one game.
Is this a 6-3 game? Who knows?
Well, it could be. It could be go from that to a high scoring game. It could be a 35, 25 kind of game. I don't know. Could be kind of wild like that. That's just the unique part of this. We don't know anything on how the Bison are going to play just because they've been sitting for 3 weeks and Northern Iowa hasn't played now in a couple weeks.
And this is going to be Northern Iowa's last game. They have 3 losses. They're not going to make the postseason. And so they made sort of come up with that rousing rallying cry of some sort of senior day. You know how teams like that tend to play well when they have nothing to lose.
And they play well against the Bison in Cedar Falls. We remember 2 years ago that all-time team the Bison had down there where they were trailing. The Bison were trailing entering the fourth quarter. Now, granted, NDSU scored 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter that day.
That pass to Bruce Anderson was
that was
epic.
The spark that got everything going. But Northern Iowa was leading in that game. They were trading punches that entire afternoon. I got blamed for Eli Dunn's great game, apparently, because I called him out in the press conference at Chris Kleiman. You remember that? That Eli had a great game that day for Northern Iowa against NDSU.
And of course,
they won there.
And the streak breaker in 2014, right?
Was there. 2016 was not an easy game either. The Bison grinded out a win that year. Easton Stick threw a couple picks that year down in Cedar Falls. It's going to obviously not be near capacity. I think 3,000 is probably, the max of what is going to be allowed inside the Unidome tomorrow. So that will be unique as well. That's just not the same experience we are all used to for games down there.
No, and obviously Bison fans will not travel like they used to. There used to be a great atmosphere with the corner of the Unidome. Pretty green and gold. They're 3,000 fans, I bet.
Easy. That would travel down.
There's going to be as many fans tomorrow as Bison fans normally at that game
would bring into that game. And I know you're writing about this, and I don't want to tip it off too much since it drops tomorrow at inforum.com about what this game could have been like.
Oh, man.
It was going to be played at the end of September.
If you take COVID out of the equation, and really if you take grad transfers out of the equation, what could have been, which you can't anymore, of course, but you start with Jabril Cox, Briley Moore. It's like 15 players I counted.
Yeah.
That could have been playing that this fall in a old school normal time of college football back a couple of years.
What do we think of NFL guys? How many? It might rival the NDSU Illinois
State
handful national championship game because Moore I think is gonna.
Moore,
Spencer
Brown, Ellerson Smith. Did you see his testing?
Yeah, Ellerson Smith is off.
41.5-inch vertical jump at 260 pounds.
He's a freak. Trey Lance, Dylan Radins, we're up to 6. Let's throw Hayes in there, probably as an outside. At least there's 7. 7 for an FCS game? Holy cow. That's pretty good stuff.
Entz rivaled it to the 2014 FCS title game with Illinois State, which had a handful of NFL guys.
I think we're almost to that mark there for that game
guys
with Illinois
who at least
State.
Had a cup of coffee was 7 or 8, I believe.
Between Illinois State and NDSU, that was crazy stuff. So as we look forward to tomorrow, there's just 2 games on the schedule. The Bison game with Northern Iowa, Youngstown State at Missouri State. And here are the Bears. Your guy, Bobby Petrino. They are 4-1 in the spring. You want to talk about teams that have enjoyed the spring. Missouri State is certainly one of them.
4-4 overall, so they have to win the auto bid.
Which there's a meandering path for them to get there. But my question to you is, do we need to take them for real in the fall of 2021?
I think so, based on they got some pretty good athletes.
They got some dudes.
And and they're much better on defense than they ever have been. It's not even close. They're so much better on D, it's not even close.
How much better are they from when you saw them in the early March when the Bison went there and blew them out?
Yeah, teams that are new, they had how many guys come in at semester break?
Right.
5, 6, 7 guys at semester break.
Man.
So when you're that new, there's a lot of room for growth.
Just crazy on that front. I want to touch on a couple things here before we wrap up. Southern Illinois was Nick Hill, the head coach, was pretty loud in his frustration at what Western Illinois decided to do. Western decided to opt out on Monday after they had beaten Youngstown State. The dominoes of that meant Southern Illinois did not have a game this weekend, and that meant USD was done too because Western was supposed to play at South Dakota next week in Vermilion. They put out a statement saying we played and we don't believe
it was
that
a
this
bravado,
was
a bravado
it was a
statement.
macho, like we're going to chest pound. I did not like it at all, Kolpack, and there's two reasons for it. A, the macho part of this, I have no time for. Second, it's up to each individual school to make up what's best for them. No one, Petrino was mad at SPAC for what Illinois State did, but they're looking out for themselves on this. And SPAC said it. We have to make sure we're not affecting the fall. So I don't get this. We're going to be mad at everybody else in the Missouri Valley about it. Jared Elliott's doing what he has to do.
How can you be surprised that Western Illinois opted out? How can you be surprised by that? Which, by the way, however, that Southern Illinois got a game.
And that was my next point on this, because SIU scheduled a game. Now they're going to get Southeastern Louisiana out of the Southland next Saturday. They still think they have a playoff shot. What are they talking about? They don't have a chance at the playoffs.
No.
That's the part
they got 3 losses.
Right. They've gotten blown out by UND and South Dakota State. They're clinging to the fact that they blew out the Bison. It's a great win. I'm mystified on where they think they had a better playoff resume last year. I was all on them. Remember, for them getting into the playoffs last year.
Now that the MEAC doesn't have an auto bid, that leaves another at-large bid, so there's 5.
Six now. It ain't going to SIU. I'm telling you that right now.
Not with 4 teams right now in the Valley with 1 loss.
No.
It's not going to happen.
It ain't going to them. I just didn't get that. Did you?
No.
On where he was coming from on that?
Frustration?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I get that, but it was just mystifying on that front. You mentioned the MEAC, and that's the last point I wanted to make before we wrap things up here. And the crazy 7 days that surrounded that, where we went from they didn't have a bid to they did have a bid to now they don't have a bid.
I don't get it. I'm not even going to try to explain it. I don't know. How do you not know that?
Well, they had 3 teams that were still. First off, when the league said we're not playing, that should have been end of discussion. And it was for everybody else following the division. All of us assumed that the MEAC didn't have an automatic bid until the playoff pairing or the rankings came out last Thursday.
What if Montana decided to play 3 games this month?
Right. Well,
Are
they're
they
playing
back
2.
in?
Yeah, they're playing 2. It's just mystifying on that. I will say for the teams like Missouri State, like a UND, South Dakota, it could be the Bison if they lose this weekend or next weekend to South Dakota State that need an extra at-large bid. They were breathing a sigh of relief on that front because there's now 1 more available.
I'm speechless. I don't know, Dom. I don't understand the MEAC. I don't understand that whole logic.
Right now, as I look at my bracketology, I have 2 teams out of the Missouri Valley and 2 out of the CAA getting bids. I think each of those teams at least get 3.
Yeah, with 6, 1 league's not going to get half, just for political reasons. They are not.
I think I have Eastern Washington, Richmond, James Madison, UND, South Dakota State, and your friends from the Word as getting the at-large bids into the tournament.
With Sam
right now.
Houston getting
the automatic bid. Yep, that's what I have right now. Is looking at the playoff field. A lot can change, obviously, over the next 2 weekends, but I think the Valley can breathe easy that they're going to get 3 teams in. The crazy part is for UND, they don't have to play and they can win the league outright. If the Bison get tripped up by
not playing,
if the Bison get tripped up by Northern Iowa, here's UND sitting there, we're okay. We don't have to play Youngstown State. We're all set. We win the automatic bid. It's how weird and bizarre the end of this season is going to be.
Even more bizarre than you.
It's hard.
Bizarre.
It's
hard to be more bizarre
than
you.
There's no doubt.
But I think we've reached it.
Before we wrap up here, biggest key for you tomorrow, is it just to see this team play, the Bison that is? Because we don't know. Are we going to Are they going to pick right up where they left off against
Hunter
UND?
Luepke, a rushing attack. If they can run against this defense, I think they win by 2 or 3 touchdowns.
How big is it with Josh Hayes not there? Destin Talbert now stepping in for a guy who's played quite a bit of football.
But Northern Iowa's offense isn't exactly air Panther or anything.
Isaiah Weston's a good player, wide receiver. If he can get loose, he can hurt you down the field.
McIlvain, though, 50% completion percentage. We didn't see that coming.
He
hasn't played.
No.
Farley said he's rusty.
Yep. His ability to scramble and get out of the pocket is what makes him so elusive. He did that in Fargo a couple years ago, but I'm reminded the Bison won that game. Was it 46-14? They hammered Northern Iowa that day. That game wasn't all that close.
If that's the offense, then it could be a long day.
Big day of coverage begins tomorrow, 11 a.m. on WDAY Extra with our Bison Media Zone pregame show live on Extra and Inforum.com. We'll then join you from Cedar Falls at about 3:30 with our live blog at Inforum.com down in Cedar Falls. Of course, we'll wrap things up with our postgame show down there with a 4 o'clock kickoff between North Dakota State and Northern Iowa. A reminder, the game is only available on ESPN Plus tomorrow. It's the Valley Game of the Week, so it's only streaming. They can catch the Bison and the Panthers tomorrow on ESPN Plus. Jeffrey, looking forward to what should be an interesting game. Hopefully
they
we
play.
have a football game. We're going to get on a plane, and hopefully we are covering a football game coming up tomorrow. For Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. That's the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo Podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank.